In the annals of history, Aulus Vitellius is remembered as a figure burdened by a reputation for laziness and insatiable gluttony. Historians, evaluating his brief reign, tended to view him as merely a nominal leader of the rebellion, a man who, even if given command of armies, would have been utterly incapable of governing the vast Roman Empire had fate elevated him to the imperial throne. Yet, contrary to these judgments, he became the third emperor during the tumultuous period known as the Year of the Four Emperors, when power in Rome changed hands with dizzying speed. Born in 15 AD, he was the first ruler in history whose roots did not trace back to ancient senatorial families. His father, though not initially from a patrician background, later managed to enter the Senate. Thanks to his extraordinary friendliness and charm, he paved his way into the highest aristocratic circles, opening doors that remained firmly closed to many others. Vitellius spent a significant part of his youth on the picturesque island of Capri, during the period when Emperor Tiberius had retired there in voluntary exile. It was there, amidst an atmosphere of luxury and intrigue, that he managed to win the favor of the future Emperor Caligula, sharing with him a common passion for thrilling chariot races. Later, his social talents allowed him to grow close to Emperor Claudius, whom Vitellius captivated with his enthusiasm for dice games, sharing this gambling passion with him. Finally, Emperor Nero, known for his artistic flair, valued both these qualities in Vitellius, especially at public events where Vitellius, a true master of flattery, often persuaded Nero to sing a song or play the lyre, and to the surprise of many, Nero rarely declined such an offer. These seemingly frivolous connections, forged through shared leisure interests, shaped his path into the highest echelons of power. Vitellius's father appears to have been a highly respected man of his time, holding important state positions 3 times. He was governor of Syria, one of the empire's key provinces, and commanded Rome while Emperor Claudius embarked on the historic invasion of Britain. Paradoxically, however, Aulus Vitellius, despite the privileges of his position, inherited none of his father's outstanding qualities, neither his statesmanship nor his administrative rigor. His career advancement was driven less by personal merit than by his close friendships with emperors, who elevated him to positions often exceeding his true abilities. Nevertheless, serving as consul in 48 AD and proconsul of Africa in 64 AD, he seemingly performed quite adequately, without significant reproach. The most crucial and, as it turned out, fatal moment in his political career was his appointment as governor of Lower Germany by Emperor Galba in 68 AD. This choice was made not because of an impressive track record or military talents, but rather in spite of them, due to his complete lack of military experience. Galba, in an extremely unstable position and fearing revolts from powerful legions, naively believed that by placing a man known for his penchant for gambling and gluttony at the head of such an important province, he could reduce the likelihood of rebellion. What tragic irony, this decision, intended to ensure loyalty, turned out to be Galba's most critical error, opening the way for events that would forever change the fate of the Roman Empire. Despite a complete absence of any substantial military experience, Vitellius remarkably managed to win the genuine affection and loyalty of the Rhine legions, primarily due to his good nature and sociable character. January 1, 69 AD, marked the starting point for a large-scale rebellion. On that day, the leaders of both German provinces categorically refused to swear allegiance to Emperor Galba. The driving force behind this revolt was provided by legates Fabius Valens and Aulus Caecina Aelianus. Soon, their initiative received strong support from legions stationed in Gaul, Britain, and Rhaetia. Vitellius's forces were divided into 2 combat columns, each under the command of Valens and Caecina respectively. They immediately began their march south with the primary goal of overthrowing Galba's rule. Vitellius, recognizing his insufficient military knowledge and experience, wisely remained in Gaul, gathering additional reinforcements to join them later. They were already en route when news reached them that Otho had usurped power in Rome. However, undeterred by these changes, they continued their resolute march south. The column under Caecina managed to cross the Alps much earlier than expected and, reaching the vast Lombard plains, camped at Cremona, where Valens soon arrived. Otho's army, significantly outnumbered, was ultimately defeated, despite several initial, albeit minor, victories. Instead of prolonging the bloody civil war and bringing more suffering to the people, Otho made the tragic decision to take his own life. After this act of self-sacrifice, Vitellius was officially recognized as the new emperor of Rome. In early June 69 AD, Vitellius made a triumphant entry into the imperial capital, Rome. Meanwhile, the military units that had previously remained loyal to Otho were dispersed to distant provinces, and the Danube legions, initially siding with the deposed emperor, returned to their permanent bases. Vitellius had barely managed to consolidate his power and form a new regime when alarming news arrived from the empire's eastern borders. Vespasian had been proclaimed emperor by the troops in Egypt, and soon they were joined by the legions of Judea, Syria, and those very Danube legions that, formerly loyal to Otho, now declared Vespasian their emperor. Since the Danube legions had the shortest distance to the heart of Italy, they immediately began their advance towards the Eternal City. Their offensive was led by Antonius Primus, an outstanding military commander of the legions stationed in Pannonia and procurator of Illyricum. To compound Vitellius's already precarious position, his loyal comrade Valens fell ill, and Caecina, by then a consul, secretly conspired with the Flavians. Without Emperor Vitellius's knowledge, Caecina treacherously plotted with the commander of the Roman fleet stationed in Ravenna for their forces to switch sides. However, his own troops, upon learning of the betrayal, refused to obey his orders, seized him, and placed him under arrest. Meanwhile, Valens, having recovered from his illness, hastily headed to Gaul in hopes of mobilizing new reinforcements for Vitellius, but unfortunately, he was captured by Flavian forces and subsequently executed. Caecina's troops, now without their general, marched to Cremona, where they engaged in a fierce battle with Primus's Flavian forces. The battle unfolded almost at the same location where, only a few months prior, they had achieved a crushing victory over Otho. This time, however, fortune turned against them. Vitellius's forces suffered a complete defeat, and Cremona was mercilessly plundered by the victors. After this triumphant victory, Primus continued his advance south, heading for Rome. In a desperate attempt to delay the enemy's advance, Vitellius tried to stop them in the mountain passes, but his own troops, having lost loyalty, defected to the enemy. Vitellius hastened back to Rome, where Sabinus, Vespasian's elder brother, served as city prefect. It was Sabinus who convinced Vitellius to abdicate the throne. However, the Praetorian Guard and the German troops, who still remained under his command, categorically refused to accept Vitellius's abdication. They likely feared for their own position. These soldiers reinstated him on the throne, because if he fell, their own future under Vespasian as emperor remained uncertain. At best, they might be exiled to the most distant corners of the empire, at worst, simply executed. Incited by these fears, they roused a mob and forced Sabinus, along with Vespasian's son Domitian, who later became emperor, to flee to the Capitoline Hill. There, Sabinus was soon killed by Vitellius's German troops, and the sacred temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus was engulfed in flames. Domitian managed to escape, and just 2 days later, Primus's troops reached Rome. In a desperate attempt to avoid the inevitable, Vitellius hid behind the heavy doors of the palace, barricading them with furniture in a futile hope of preventing entry. However, all his efforts proved to be in vain. He was soon dragged from his hiding place, paraded semi-naked through the city streets, subjected to agonizing torture, then finally executed, and his body was thrown into the waters of the Tiber River. Vitellius's reign as emperor lasted only 8 months. This brief period he dedicated to a moderate drinking and attending up to 4 banquets daily, enjoying the most exquisite delicacies. The only significant and positive aspect of his short time in power was his expansion of the imperial civil service, which opened opportunities for equestrians to hold positions within it. Meanwhile, Vespasian remained in Egypt, awaiting the unfolding of events. His initial strategic plan envisioned the governor of Syria sending his troops to Italy. However, when the Danube legions expressed their support for Vespasian, they were able to act much more swiftly than initially anticipated. It raises an interesting thought about how events would have unfolded if Otho had not ended the civil war with Vitellius. After all, it was precisely the Danube legions that ultimately inflicted a decisive defeat on Vitellius, and they were en route to support Otho, who nevertheless chose to take his own life to avoid prolonging the bloody conflict. However, the true outcome of such a scenario will forever remain in the realm of conjecture. Thus, Vespasian now established himself as the sole ruler of the Roman Empire. He became the last in the succession of emperors during the tumultuous year of the 4 emperors, and he was destined to found a new ruling dynasty in Rome, the Flavians.